Hey guys, thanks for tuning into Straight to the Core, an in-depth, no-nonsense look into all things physical therapy, wellness, and the business of being healthy. We are your hosts. I'm Claire. I'm Mark's wife.
I'm Mark. I'm Claire's husband.
And today we are talking about the top five, not even top five exercises that you could do if you could only ever do 5 exercises and go.
So I would say that they're
List them. Just go. Go. Off the top of your head, list them, and we'll get into each one. List them.
Number 1, power clean and jerk. Kind of cheating because it's multiple exercises, in my opinion. But if you call it one exercise, number 1.
Okay.
Number 2, trap deadlifts. Number 3, jammer press. 4, pull-ups. 5, lunges. Notice there's no squats on there.
Number 1. Well, now I did this with a functional thought as a very small, petite person who has to do things in life. Clean with a front squat. Overhead press or a jerk or a thruster, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. Doesn't have to be strict overhead. Lunge with some sort of rotation. Mm. A deadlift or preferably sumo, because I think that's functional. And hammer curls.
Ooh. Bringing up the hammer curls. Mm-hmm. That's a good one. Okay, so number 1, the power clean from the floor, just a floor clean and press, obviously incorporates the entire body. You get a deadlift out of it, you get a hinge position out of it, you get a front rack out of it, and then you get a press overhead. If you think that's cheating and it's multiple exercises, technically it isn't, and it is at the same time, then I would probably change my list. But I'm going to count that as one exercise because you can do it all at once, and it literally will work your entire body.
Okay.
Number 1.
So very similar to my number 1 was a clean and front squat. And the reason that I picked that is, yes, it's a whole body exercise. However, if you think about, if you have to pick something up and get it up to your shoulder mm-hmm. or up overhead in any capacity, or you have to try to lift, push, like elevate something, I kind of feel like as somebody who maybe I'm not like strong enough to do some sort of, what is it, like the Atlas stone, kind of like sit back, pull it up to me. Like that's probably how I'm going to get heavier items, right? Like if I had a piece of luggage that I needed to get into the overhead bin,
and I've seen it firsthand.
I'm going to do some sort of like clean movement and some sort of like front squat movement. It's functional.
Quite functional. Mm-hmm. And obviously I believe that a front squat is more functional than a back squat. We can talk about that totally different time, but front squats, weights in front of you, that's real life. Mm-hmm. Sumo deadlift, same way.
Yep. And I think if you're going to clean something up to the front rack position, you're going to do something with it. You're either going to squat it, right, in an attempt to like get it up into a different position, or you're going to jerk it, press it, whatever, like you would put it. So I guess both of us put our top exercises, something that's very similar.
Very similar.
Go
for the
us.
same reason. Yes. Okay, that was terrible. Okay, you're pretty far away. All right, number 2 is a trap bar deadlift. A trap bar deadlift is not a true deadlift. It's not a squat. It's like a dumbbell squat. But the reason I like it is because it's easy to recruit a lot of muscles, and it's hard to make a mistake with it. So if you're training with it, you can lift very heavy and get a good hinge out of it and a good semi-squat position out of it and use a lot of weight. And the risk of injury is pretty low because as soon as you lift that off the ground, it levels itself and it's hard to mess up. And that's probably why most Division I schools now use that instead of a lot of other exercises.
Now, from a functional standpoint, I did not pick the trap bar deadlift because I picked sumo deadlift. But Correct. In a very, very similar fashion, I think a trap bar deadlift, if you've ever had to, well, almost every female I ever know or I've ever met, if you're taking groceries out of a car, you're going to do every single thing that you can to make one trip and one Correct. Trip only. And so what do? You load up each arm and you carry it into the house, mm-hmm. essentially doing a trap bar deadlift.
Yeah, and then what would be considered a farmer's carry at the same time,
exactly.
which is what you would do with a trap bar deadlift.
Yes, if you were on the move with it.
So yeah.
Sir, I applaud your choice.
Yeah, it's a good choice. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to mess it up. So I think it's just one of those great exercises that sometimes people don't do because it's not as glamorous. but it's safe, it's easy, and very effective.
I think a lot of people don't necessarily know what a trap bar deadlift. I mean, they know what a trap bar deadlift is, but they don't necessarily know like where
why,
it falls. Like, is it a squat? Is it a deadlift?
It's
is
a
it
hybrid.
Cheating? It absolutely is. It's like the love child between the two.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like a squat with the weight almost in front of you. It counterbalances at your center of mass, so it's literally the easiest way to partial squat or to partial deadlift.
And let's face it, even though I picked sumo deadlift, which I'll get to here in a second, it is definitely probably a functional way to carry something, right? Like a conventional deadlift, which I know a lot of people are like, it's God's way. Conventional deadlift is not the most efficient way to lever something up very often. If you're going to pick up something heavy, you're not going to necessarily put the full load in front of you. You're going to try to like offset it, put yourself in the middle of it, and lift it up.
If you think about it, if the implements in a strongman competition, Atlas stones, sandbag throws, keg tosses, tire flips, whatever, it's all sumo. In real life, you're lifting your TV in the garage, you're sumo.
Are you giving me props from a...
Yeah, it's great. I think sumo is more functional than, I mean, that's controversial or whatever, but it's not. That's how you lift stuff.
We have a treadmill, obviously, in the clinic, and we had to pick it up for, I don't even remember what it was.
Because there was a cat stuck under it. Yeah. Not one of our cats, but a cat.
Yeah, Lulu.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Good looking cat.
Yeah, it was a good looking cat, bro. We had to pick it up. We had to pick up the treadmill. And as somebody who is on the smaller side trying to pick up something heavy, I don't care if world records are set with a conventional deadlift. You put your hands in the middle and you spread your feet as wide as you can and as stable as you can, and you lift that sucker up sumo style.
And because the center of mass, yeah, your favorite, because the center mass is closer to you in a sumo deadlift than a conventional deadlift, and it's inherently a safer position for your back. Not universally true, but mostly true. Yes.
Yes. Yep. Okay. Well, you just segued into my. Now, I will say, potentially. Did I put that in there? Oh, I kind of put it in as like an honorable mention because I think hinging is important, as you mentioned. Yeah. And so a stiff-legged deadlift or a good morning, I kind of put like sumo deadlift or stiff-legged deadlift, but I'll put that in there. Like a deadlift, a good morning doesn't necessarily have the functionality that a deadlift does. Deadlift definitely like wins on that regard, but it's an important movement to have because we hinge a lot in life.
Yeah, pretty much all the time.
Yeah, so.
All right, my number 3 is the jammer press, and maybe all of you don't know this, but the hammer strength jammer was very popular in the 90s and 2000s. It still is somewhat popular, but because of its size, it's not utilized like it used to be. But essentially, you're doing a 45 degree off of the vertical of basically a thruster. It's a thruster that's not up. It's a thruster that's forward.
Right. And if any of you took like Physics 101, you remember the example of how do you get maximum distance with a ball being thrown, right? Like you're throwing it at a 45 degree angle.
Correct.
So the jammer essentially was saying, okay, from a functionality standpoint, we don't want to necessarily do something strictly vertical. We need to have it somewhere on that like diagonal, and the most efficient or probably the most effective diagonal is going to be that 45 degree angle. Now, obviously,
and very sport specific at the same time.
And one of the negatives or one of the drawbacks of a jammer is that as a short person, like that angle then obviously changed because I'm starting in a different position. It didn't have the adjustability, I think, but still, I remember even in Podunk Council Bluffs, we had a jammer probably like 5 years after everybody else. I know Lewis Central was like on top of it.
We didn't have one in my high school.
It made the Daily Nonpareil, which is the Council Bluffs newspaper. It was like the front page of the sports section when we got it.
So jammers are awesome. They're one of my favorite exercises. It's basically a triple extension press into like a 45 degree.
But I do agree. It's like from a floor space standpoint, like it doesn't
big.
Share well. Yeah.
It's a big piece of equipment. It's not very versatile. It's not super adjustable. It primarily was invented for football players, and that's pretty much who it fits. Mm-hmm. I think there's probably newer variants that are better. But because of the size and the cost and the lack of versatility, I think a lot of colleges have kind of fallen away from it, which is actually incredibly sad.
Well, I think one of the cool things that you could do if you kind of understood the limitations of the jammer, but then how to make it work for you is it's extremely stable. So you, the user, could add in the element of rotation, which I'll get to here in just a second. So yes, you could stand there and do like a straightforward press, but you also could do it with rotation because the machine, the frame itself was so stable. It did not matter how you put force into it, it was going to stay, and you could produce force in the correct motion. That
like a rotational press.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's probably actually a better exercise than just a straight jammer for most people, but similar to like a 2-armed shot put with rotation, kind of is what it looks like.
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah. My number 3 was actually the deadlift, but I'll go back to number 2 since we skipped it. Overhead press of some sort, not a strict overhead press, because I don't think anybody's going to strict overhead press something in a functional, like, oh, hey, I have to put this on the shelf above my head. But any sort of like jerk motion or a thruster motion, I think. Or
like a push press.
Yes. I think that's just from functionality standpoint, like that's probably my number 2. That's what I do day in, day out. If I have to put something up overhead.
I kind of feel bad because my clean and jerk is basically cheating. 2 exercises that you have. You just split them up.
I know.
Yeah, I would say the push press is better than the jerk because dropping in real life to catch is not super applicable in real life. You're going to push press something more likely than dropping.
I will say, and there are a few people who do this, but typically if you're going to do like a clean and jerk, you're going to do like a split squat jerk.
Yes.
There are an occasional, I think it's mostly, is it the Chinese that do like a squat? Yeah. Which I think is more functional actually, because if you were going to actually do that and like you were trying to lock something up overhead and you needed to use your own body in an advantage to get those lock, you would do that. You would do a squat jerk.
Plus it'd be incredibly more stable if the weight was unbalanced.
Right.
If you do a split jerk with an unbalanced weight, it would be super awkward because your feet are asymmetrical.
Absolutely.
Just my 2 cents. Mm-hmm. All right.
Now, that rotation aspect, and the widened base of support, I did actually use to my advantage in my choice number 4 of a lunge with rotation. Because I think, yes, a lunge is great because of the versatility of a lunge, right? Like you have the benefits of kind of a single leg sort of stability sort of exercise, but you have the added benefit of your opposite leg kind of helping out balance wise. And so it's a great multi-joint exercise for sure, but adding in some element of rotation with it where, I'm thinking like lunge, rotate that, something like that. Yeah. That's lower back stability or spine stability or core stability, whatever you want to call it.
Very much balance.
Right. And related. I think that from a functional standpoint, right? Like how many times do you get yourself in like a weird position that is somewhat lunge-like, but you're not doing something in a straight line. Like you kind of lunge for that base of support, or you lunge for, because it's in a weird position, you're trying to like squeeze yourself into a weird space. And you're doing something that, like from a body mechanic standpoint, someone looking, if you had like an out of body experience, you're like, that's terrible. But
excuse me, sir, stop doing that.
You should really stop doing that. But your future self floats down as a ghost. Don't ever do that again. But that's real life, right? And so I think training for those things, like, hey, here's a really, really unstable position, and learn how to stabilize in it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I have a little bit.
What?
I do agree with that. Well, one of mine is lunges. Now, I chose to take out the rotational component because I think that a rotational squat is fantastic, but it would always be limited to balance. And the amount of loading that you can do with a lunge with rotation would be very minimal. And I don't know that you would ever build muscle mass or strength doing it. It's very dependent on balance. But the straight lunge would be my also. So it's basically the same version of what you're saying, except I'm loading heavier.
Oh my
God,
we're best friends.
Best friends. Okay, good. But yeah, lunges are fantastic. I don't have squats on my list because squats are not super functional. A front squat is infinitely more functional, and a Zercher squat is more functional than a back squat.
For those of you that don't know, a Zercher squat is where the bar is in front of you, but instead of it being in the front rack position where it's up kind of on your shoulders, it sits in the crook of your arm, or sits in your elbow essentially.
Which would essentially put the weight even more forward in your stance. But that's the way you would hold and carry
from a
something.
functionality standpoint, yes, absolutely.
Obviously not a most comfortable exercise, however.
Sir, your fifth and final choice.
Okay, so this is a hard one for me because it's like kind of functional. It's kind of not functional, but I feel like it works so much of your body in a way that's very preventative.
I forgot what you picked.
I've always hated this exercise.
Calf raises?
No. Stop. Different topic. I've always hated this exercise. I've always felt like it was really a good exercise, so I always do them. But I hate them.
Pull-ups?
Yes.
Oh, I also hate pull-ups.
I think pull-ups utilize your body in such a way to stabilize for all those others because it's such a heavy lat-dependent exercise. It helps you bench press. It helps you do stability for your upper thoracic spine for all kinds of heavy lifting in real life.
Well, you want to talk about like...
But is it functional?
I know core stability is kind of like this buzzword that we all talk about in like healthcare and fitness and wellness.
I mean,
and like, you have to have a strong core.
Huge part of that.
Yeah. And have you ever tried to do a pull-up when the rest of your body is like...
Yeah, it doesn't work.
No, you have to. If you watch a gymnast do a kip, like their body is in a very specific position and they're holding their body in that position.
Correct.
So I think from a core stability standpoint, it's a great exercise. Obviously, from like a shoulder stability exercise or standpoint, it's a great exercise.
The entire upper body.
I don't know. Functionality. I remember my elementary school PE teacher, Mr. Miller, this is his name, always talked about how we did pull-ups like this.
Yeah.
Because if you were hanging off of a cliff and you had to pull yourself up, you couldn't.
You can't underhand grip, no.
You have to.
It'd be probably be pronated. That's such a low likely scenario. I don't
Correct. But you know what? His sentence
stuck with you clearly.
Has lived rent free in my brain for many, many years.
You know what though? If you fall off a balcony that has railings, you can do like a hammer or neutral grip pull up too to save yourself.
Probably like swing myself, to be honest. I'd swing to get a leg up.
In that situation, if the balcony didn't have anything underneath it, you could kip. But if it was a flat...
No, I'm thinking like swing side to side.
Oh, yeah, you could do that. Kipping
is... momentum.
You can't kip, though, when you're on a flat face. If you're on a rock face...
Yeah, well, then obviously you just like use your tiptoes, right?
Yeah, well, maybe there's moisture. I don't know.
It's a slick tiled surface. You were hanging off of a ledge of honed...
Polished concrete.
Yes.
You cannot use your legs. Okay. It's real slippery.
Honed polished marble is what I was trying to think of. I was like, what do we have in our... Yeah. Then I mean, I'm probably falling off anyway, but still. But you know what? Thanks to Mr. Miller, that thought lives rent free in my brain. And I think about that all the time. Now, I still hate pull-ups and I'm not very good at them. But if I were to do a pull-up, if I was so possessed to do a pull-up, that said pull-up would be done in a pronated grip or an overhead grip.
Which is the most natural position for your shoulder because your elbows are now in front of you and doesn't put a lot of emphasis on your biceps. But I digress. This is the last exercise. The number 5 was the pull-ups. I don't find it particularly functional, but I think it's a good accessory for so many different things. That's
because you cheated and your first choice was 2 exercises.
I don't think a clean and jerk is 2 exercises, but it can be broken down into many multiples. It's technically 3 different lifts in one time.
You said bicep earlier. That goes to my last choice, my 5th choice, the hammer curl. Mm-hmm. Because I think, again, from a functional standpoint, if you're going to pick something up, like I'm not picking up a platter, right? No. I'm gonna pick something up like this. And let's face it, I want nice arms.
Well, I mean, let's face it. When you lift things, you don't really pronate, supinate much. Everything is going to be neutral
grip. So hammer grip, if you don't know, and if you're just listening to us and you did not see me do this, then a hammer curl is a bicep curl and a neutral grip, which it's unfortunately a misnomer that we're calling it a bicep curl because a neutral grip, you're actually using other muscle, brachioradialis.
And then the brachialis. So
Yes.
the bicep is actually less active in a bicep curl with a hammer grip because of the position of the hand.
You want to get
and the
specifics
wrist.
for aesthetics, then you do hammer curl with a supination at the very, very top.
Yeah.
Because your bicep, unfortunately, if you guys don't know this, your bicep is not the world's strongest elbow flexor.
Well, and for a long
Three
time.
of three. Yeah.
Yeah. For a long time, people think that, biceps are a show muscle. And you know what? They are. But you use them every day, all day, because anytime
I thought you were like,
lift,
you know what? For a small, they are. I thought that's what you were doing.
I will say next to shoulders and knees, right up there, biceps are injured a ton. And I think a lot of people don't work them in a way that's conducive to the health of the biceps.
We have to load it in the same way, right? Now, this is totally off topic, but it more so just goes to confirming my choice, is that one of the things that happens with steroid use is that you get very, very strong, very, very quickly, muscular. And so the tendons don't necessarily have time to strengthen as that. And so sometimes we'll see bicep tears because of steroid use. No judgment there, but sometimes it's just a thing. And so when you think of, oh, hey, I'm doing something, we'll go back to the sumo deadlift. If you deadlift with at least one hand supinated or an underhand grip, then you're going to be very, very tempted to use your bicep. And if you don't load your biceps, then that's going to be the weakest link in that chain.
Yep. So very underrated. People don't tear triceps very often.
No, they do happen, but yeah.
Pecs are a little bit more common, but biceps are torn all the time.
So what I'm hearing you say is that not only do you really, really approve of your choices, obviously, because they're your choices, but you also really, really approve of my choices.
I do. But don't forget, there's a lot of bicep involvement in a pull-up.
I picked good choices.
You did. We're actually very close to each other as far as what we picked, which was weird because we did not do this together.
I know. We should have
We agreed on quite a bit of the points.
I know.
Weird.
Best friend.
Don't like this.
Best
Uncomfortable.
Best friends.
Okay.
So if you want to hear more of this banter and you want to hear our thoughts about the 5 best of other things, I don't know, 5 best restaurants, 5 best cocktails.
Oh, that's hard.
That's a tough
Maybe we should do a tasting.
5 best series.
5 best cocktails, and we do samples here.
Oh God, I think by the 4th and 5th sample, everything's good.
It can't be worse than our White Claw challenge of 2020.
We'll keep that one under wraps. If you would be interested in something like that, then you can find that and many, many, many more topics of conversation under our Straight to the Core podcast. That's what we're calling this. Yes.
Spotify, Apple Music,
Spotify and
YouTube.
Apple. We're also on social media under Instagram for Core Omaha and Facebook, Core Physical Therapy and Sports Performance. And we're even big time enough to have a website, coreomaha.com.
We've had that website for quite some time.
I know. I'm saying we're even big enough.
Yes.
Okay. This is Claire.
And this is Mark.
We're out.
Out.